Okay, I am going to describe a camera to you, and in just a minute, I am going to ask you to guess what it is. So, pay attention. Are you ready? This camera has a full-frame 20 megapixel sensor. It has uncropped 4K video. It does 1080 full HD all the way up to 120 frames per second, which means you can get some really awesome slow motion video. It has amazing autofocus, a touchscreen monitor, and the list goes on with a ton of other little minute details that honestly I'm not going to bore you with right now. Any guesses? If you think that you know what camera I'm talking about, I want you to write it down in the description right now before I tell you. No cheating. The camera that I just described to you is the Canon 1DX Mark II. And a couple of years ago, this camera was the best. I mean, not including those huge, clunky cinema cameras. All of the big YouTubers had them, like Peter McKinnon was known for using one, Parker Walbeck talked about it all the time in his videos, Matty Apoya had one, and of course if Matty had one, I really wanted to have one too. But the big downside was, this camera was gigantic. I mean, like the size of my face. And not only that, it was ridiculously expensive. At the time, it was like a $6,000 camera. You can still pick one of these up new for over $4,000. It's so noisy out here. I'm going inside. I thought it would be nice to be outside. That's just not happening. Can I just show you? She's just really comfortable out here. I just feel really bad making her come in, but I don't want to leave her out here unattended. So hang on a second and come inside and we'll be in the air conditioning away from those air conditioners. But what if I told you that there was a camera that you could get for 60% less money that can do almost all of the things that the 1DX Mark II can do? In fact, it can do all of the things that I mentioned in the list at the very beginning of the video, except for it actually has a 24 megapixel sensor instead of a 20 megapixel sensor. Meet the Sony A7C. Now, you might have seen this camera introduced last year to eye rolls around the world before it was quickly overshadowed by the launch of the Sony A7S III. A lot of people were actually really pissed when this camera came out. They thought at $17.99 it was too expensive because it was essentially a Sony A7 III put into a smaller body without any card slots. So really, who cares? You know who cares? Me. The Sony A7 III is and was a phenomenal camera. With the exception of not being able to do 4K video at 60 frames per second, it could do all of the other stuff that the 1DX Mark II could do at a fraction of the price. Almost. It was very nearly perfect, and there are a lot of people that will tell you that it was perfect, but for me, there were two things that held me back from spending all of my money on it. The first was that, unlike the Canon, the autofocus was not reliable. It was okay, but for someone who planned on filming themselves, it wasn't good enough. The second thing was, along with that unreliable autofocus, it had no flip-out screen, so I had no way of monitoring myself unless I wanted to get some add-on or an external monitor to use with it, which would kind of deter me from wanting to take it places. I want something that I can stick in my bag and go with, and having a bunch of extra crap to carry around with it wasn't really something I wanted to do. But on the day that this camera was announced, while most of the rest of the world was sitting there moaning and groaning and being all pissy because people like to do that, I was celebrating because this camera was finally the one that I wanted. It was the A7 III that I had been eyeing for forever and almost bought like 4 times, but with a fold-out screen and obviously some aesthetic differences. But you know what? I really like this two-tone. I've always wanted a vintage rangefinder looking camera, but a new one. So yeah, I feel like this camera was kind of made specifically for me. Maybe that's egotistical, but you know what? I like it, so I'm gonna tell myself that. So I kind of mentioned this before in passing, but again, the A7C has a 24 megapixel sensor. It's just a perfect middle ground for people that want to do photography and also want to do video. And in my opinion, it takes excellent photos, especially for someone like me who doesn't consider themselves a professional photographer, but still likes to go out and take pictures. Like when we were in Moab, I took so many pictures with this camera and I love how almost all of them came out. It takes beautiful 4K video at 24 and 30 frames per second that is not cropped, unlike the Canon EOS R that right now is being sold for exactly the same price. It also shoots in 120 frames per second in 1080, unlike the EOS R, which only does 60, and again, costs exactly the same, and is like 2 years older. It also has amazing autofocus, which is something that the A7 III did not have, and Canon always had the leg up on. Another thing that I really like about this camera is the size. This thing is super light. It comes in at 1.1 pounds, whereas if I had gotten the 1DX Mark II, it would have weighed 3.37 pounds and would have ripped my arm right out of the socket. Okay, that is a little bit dramatic, but think about it. I'm 5 feet tall, so for me, holding something that's 3.37 pounds out away from my face like this for a good hour while I vlog would, probably be impossible. As for complaints, I don't have many. I did have a little bit of a learning curve with the colors. I felt like anything except for just the most standard out-of-the-box profile had a lot of a yellowy green cast to it, and apparently a lot of the other Sony cameras are kind of like this too. But I did find a workaround for that. I developed my own custom HLG2 picture profile, which solves all of those issues for me. And honestly, it's still in beta mode, but if it's something that you're interested in, I'm happy to share all of these settings with you. So leave a message down in the comments and I will gladly send all of the settings your direction. Do I wish that it had dual card slots? Yeah, that would be really nice. But of all of the cameras in this price range that do the things that I want them to do, none of them have dual card slots. So one day, I might invest in something that has them, like the Sony A7S III, but this does so many of the things that I want right now that I honestly just can't justify upgrading. So who is this camera best for? I'd say this camera is a little too much for a beginner. There's just too much stuff that you can customize. But I will say that if you are already super comfortable shooting in manual mode and you're looking to upgrade into something that is going to give you more customization than something like, say, Canon EOS R, if you're looking for something mid-range, I think this is the best camera out there. I really, really do. I'm excited about this camera like I was excited about the M1 MacBook Air. I really, at this point, only review things that make me super happy, and this really, really does. I've got a link to the camera and all of the accessories that I love to use with it down in the description, so feel free to go and check that out. And while you're on your way down there, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, hit that bell, that way you never miss another video that I come out with. And thanks so much for watching. I will see you next week.